Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome. I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. My guest today left a promising career as an ecologist, catching protected reptiles, amphibians, and kissing frogs, to move to remote northwest Spain with her blue-eyed prince, now blue-eyed husband. In between writing, she uses her time growing her own food, continuing to renovate and look after 2 stone farmhouses, and discovering more of the stunningly beautiful area she calls home. She's happiest outside weeding, watching the antics of her chickens, or in her kitchen cooking on her wood-burning range. She writes about the wild land of myths and legends she inhabits. Welcome to Authors Over 50, Lisa Rose Wright.
Thank you, Julia. It's great to be here.
Our opening question on Authors Over 50 is always, what took you so long to write your first book?
Well, funnily enough, I actually wrote my first book when I was about 7 years old. I wrote a story about 2 friends who found a magic carpet and then became invisible. Quite interesting. I followed this up with a set of stories about creatures on different planets. And I can still remember very well Soapy from Saturn. Sadly, I never had any staying power, and all of those stories are sort of half completed. I actually found them when I was clearing Mum's house for her move here to Galicia to be with us, and I've still got them. They're they're quite funny. But anyway, but after that, I don't know. I guess life got in the way. So although I still kept a journal, I've always kept a diary. I've always written things. I always used to write to my mum every week, and just, yeah, life got in the way then. So I never really carried on.
Well, you must have been doing a lot of traveling, because now you've written a trilogy of travelogue memoirs.
I have. I'm actually, my 5th book is actually due to launch on the 1st of March, 2023. So that'll be 5 then. Yes.
What are some of your favorite places in those travelogues that you can share with our listeners?
In Galicia, I think, well, my first 3 travelogues were about the place that we've moved to here in Galicia, in central Galicia, and about us renovating our farmhouse and things like that. And then I wrote a book about all the different places that we've been in Galicia, which there's just so many. It's such a beautiful area, really. But the place where we live is stunningly beautiful. It's very remote. I'm at the moment sitting in my car because we don't get good internet in the house. So if you wonder what the background is, that's the sun just going down. And the whole area, really, it's very rural, very friendly. It's just beautiful, really.
Well, I've been to Spain, but not to that area, and it sounds just so intriguing.
It's a very different part of Spain from the Spain that most people would imagine. It's not the dry, hot, desert-like part of Spain. It's not the costas on the Mediterranean coast. Our coast is the Atlantic, so it's much colder sea, much more wild, It's a totally different sort of. We're much greener up here. We get a lot more rain than most places in Spain, but like today, we've had 2 weeks of gorgeous sunshine, cold overnight, but really beautiful. So it's very, very different from Spain. It's considered a Celtic country. It's one of the 7 Celtic lands, and I think it's a bit more like sort of maybe Ireland would be, so green, but not quite as wet as Ireland, I think, and a bit warmer. But that sort of thing, really, rather than the Spain that most people think of.
Well, how did you decide to settle there?
Well, that's quite interesting, actually, because when I first met my now husband, we'd done a few holidays that were sort of beach holidays, and then he suggested walking the Camino de Santiago, the Way of St. James. And I'd actually never heard of the Way of St. James or of Galicia either. So I got onto the internet and started looking places up. And I thought, this sounds a really interesting walk and an interesting area. So we set off to do that walk. And while I was looking on the internet for information about the Way of St. James, I happened to also find an agency that was selling houses in Galicia. Now, we'd both been looking to move somewhere else so that we could grow more of our own food and be more independent, more self-sufficient. And I just thought, well, I'll put that number in my pocket and you never know. And we completely fell in love with Galicia as soon as we set foot in it. Ended up looking at houses and ended up coming back time and again until we found one that we liked. And that was sort of it, really. Sort of love at first sight, I think.
Yeah. I think you can feel that when you travel to certain places, you're drawn to them, over others. Well, once you wrote your first book, how did you proceed? Did you search for an agent, decide to use a hybrid, a small press, or did you self-publish?
I wanted to publish traditionally, and I managed to find a small press that were interested. Unfortunately, I became very unhappy with their editing process. They were actually introducing errors into the manuscript when they were proofreading, and I wasn't happy with what they wanted for the cover because they had like a Mediterranean design for the cover. And as I've said, Galicia is not the Mediterranean. It just didn't feel right for me. And then I was very lucky that a fellow author who also lives in Galicia called Craig Briggs, I met him through a writers group, and he very kindly helped me to self-publish. And I've never looked back, really. So I've self-published all of my books, and I'm very happy with that. It seems to work very well for me.
We have so many options these days, and self-publishing has certainly become one of those strong ones for writers who want to have complete control of their manuscripts.
Yeah, I think I'm probably a bit of a control freak anyway. I mean, looking back, I actually feel quite sorry for the publisher because I think they were probably trying their best, but it wasn't my vision. And I think I really wanted my vision, not theirs. So, yeah. But I'm very, very happy with the self-publishing route.
How did writing your first book change your process of writing?
I think before I wrote the book, I'd written sort of short stories about events since we moved here. I'd kept a journal, things like that. But I'd never really thought to put them all together into a book and to actually create something. The first book is sort of our first year here, the events and things that we did in the first year here. And I liked writing that. And I wanted to write a second one, but I wanted it to have a proper story arc. I didn't want it to just be, and here's another year, and here's another year. So I wrote the second one about, it's still a year, but it's the year that it took us to get permissions to get married here in Galicia. So the story arc is that process, really. So I think I think I've changed sort of slightly how I write, but also the process of how I go about writing as well. It used to take me a long time to write something. Now I write very quickly, and it takes me a long time to edit it, which tends to take about 4 times as long as the writing, I think now. But I think you get on a roll, I think, once you've started, it becomes addictive, doesn't it?
It really does. And my first book took forever, I thought, and I think I did learn to write more quickly with the second one. What about challenges in publicity? You're in a different country. Do you have any different ways of publicizing the book there, or do you rely on Amazon and all of the online marketing? How do you handle your marketing and publicity?
Um, I do struggle with marketing. I used to be a sales rep, so I should be good at marketing, but it's sort of different when you're marketing yourself somehow. Um, I'm also very nervous of putting money into like Amazon ads and things like that. I'm not very good at, I've never been any good at betting, that sort of thing. So I'm not very good at putting that money out there without really knowing what I'm doing. So I tend to, when I published my first book, I did manage to put myself out there and got a couple of interviews with some local newspapers from where I used to live in England, and that was really nice. Because I also reconnected with friends from school, which was lovely, from sort of 35 years ago or something, that was really nice. But I tend to use, I suppose, Facebook mainly for my publicity. I've got a web page. I do a blog every month. I've started doing some podcasts. This is quite new to me, but I've done a couple now, so I quite like that. It's good fun as well because I like talking, as you'll probably find out by the end of this. But I do find it quite difficult, really, with doing marketing and things.
Well, since your books are travel logs and about the area where you live, are there any visitors bureaus there, or bookstores that would carry your books about the area, about the locals?
I have thought about that. I have a friend in the Algarve in Portugal, and she publicizes her books. She's a member of the local sort of travel community, and she does very well down there. The problem mainly in Galicia is that there are not so many English speakers, and most tourists that we get are sort of Spanish speaking tourists. Now, I have thought about translating the books, and I might do that at some point. Certainly the fourth one, which is a travelogue of places that we visited in Galicia. And I do have a friend who works in the local tourist information office, and he's offered to put some of the books in there, and because he does get some English speaking visitors coming in. So hopefully that will work. I keep thinking I should ask the local bookshop, but other than our neighbours who all speak Gallego, not even Spanish, I'm not sure who would ever go in our local bookshop. It's pretty remote, so I can't imagine us getting many tourists. But yes, I must do more. I shall make a New Year's resolution. Must do better.
Well, especially along that walk. I've heard several people from here in Texas, who have been there, and they might like to have a book about the areas.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I've actually met some people who have been to Galicia after reading my book, and I've met up with them, and that was really quite a thrill,
Yeah.
to meet people that have come here after reading the book and been interested. And that's actually probably nicer than selling the books in a way, just really lovely thing, really.
It really is. That's been my favorite part of writing my own book, is hearing from people who aren't your friends or aren't your family, but who really truly enjoyed your book. That's really a thrill.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, we all expect family and friends to be nice about us, but when a stranger is, then that's pretty special, I think.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the passage that you've brought to share today and then read from it so that we can hear your tone and voice in the book?
Okay. Well, the book, one of the reasons I started writing the book was when Mum moved here, when we were packing up her 63 years of, I won't use the word junk, things from her home in England. One thing I found was all of the letters that I sent to her every week since I left home, actually. But since we moved here, I wrote to her every single week and she kept every letter. So those letters formed the basis of the book, really, for me. And it's quite interesting because it's amazing what the memory forgets, the things that you forget, especially the feelings that you had when you know, from a while ago, because we moved here in 2007. So it was quite a while. It was 13 years when I first started writing the book. So I'd like to read, it's one of the first letters that I wrote home to Mum after we'd moved here. And I'd like to read that to you. It's in the book. There are letters in the book, so I'd like to read a bit from that, if I may. Wednesday, the 15th of August, hot and humid. Dear Mum, I'm writing this in the living room, sitting in a not entirely comfortable deck chair, listening to a CD and the crickets outside as the darkness falls. It's warm and so far dry, inside anyway. We had 2 rain showers earlier, but only a couple of leaks, sorted with the aids of buckets. It's 23 to 29 degrees centigrade during the day and around 15 degrees overnight. 1 week has gone already. We've had 4 fiestas, hundreds of plums consumed, and lots of adventures. We arrived in Galicia last Wednesday after a good run from Bilbao to Gens. I'll just say that's a friend of ours who put us up. The ferry trip was excellent, with lots of whale watching, thanks to Clive, the wildlife chap on P&O ferries. We stopped for lunch at Cadavedo from our walking days, and we were amazed that our painful, nay, agonising, 2-week walk whizzed past in just 2 hours driving. We had only time to drop our bags at Jen's and grab a bite before she whisked us away to an international dance festival in Monterosso, compared by our Spanish estate agent's son, Pablo. There are very professional Cossack dancers, a wonderful local dance school, and a rather elderly troupe from Ponferrada, who promenaded rather genteelly, but had much more stamina than us at 12:30 a.m. And it was all for free. The Cossack dancers alone would have been good enough for a West End show. It was also very loud. The Spanish don't do quiet appreciation, so there was much shouting, whistling, and clapping. It all conspired to keep us awake anyhow. Despite a late night, we've had a productive day. We now have a bedroom and a living area with deck chairs and a functioning stereo system, perched on top of one of our newly restored potty cupboards. These were found in the bedroom. Sweet chestnut polishes up beautifully, but boy was the cloth mucky afterwards. The kitchen is clean, and with the old gas hob functioning, we are looking quite homely. Outside is our daytime eating, working, and washing area. That's my husband, has even put up a washing line. Our neighbour Carmen is still supplying our water, but the well seems to be clearing. At least it doesn't look like I'm pulling a pint of ale out of the tap, brown and frothy. We'll get it tested next week at the pharmacy. The water is from a spring and very pure. Our garden is looking incredibly productive, despite, or maybe because of, 12 years of neglect. We have plums galore, all delicious. The figs are nearly ripe. There are grapes, pears, and apples, together with peaches and nectarines for later. The walnuts are loaded too, as are the chestnuts. We will do well as fruitarians. or fruit and nutcases. Ha ha.
That is so great. And what detail you wrote your mother.
I did, yes. It's
That
detail that I can't remember now.
Yeah, that just pulled us right in. I could just picture all of that, your homestead, and what a garden you have with all that fruit.
Yeah, yes, we have. Yes, we've got a lot. And it was very, very productive, interestingly. They were all there, just all this fruit.
Well, do you have to do much research about your area, or do you just mainly write about what you experience yourself?
The first three books were mainly about our own experiences, but I've always tried to include a bit about the area, so places that we've visited. So every one of those books has a bit of history about some of the places that we visited during that year. So I do some research for that, obviously, to find things out. It's a very historical area. We've got a Roman city just 40 minutes away from us called Lugo, which has a complete set of Roman walls, which is quite amazing. We've got another Roman city to the south of us, which have hot water pools, thermal baths along the river. And we've got so much history around here. So that was actually really interesting doing all the research for that.
What does your family think about you being a writer? Do they support your career?
Yes, I think once they got over the initial shock, my husband's excellent. He's my alpha, beta, and omega reader. He has a better memory than me, so he's very good at the detail. If I've written something that he doesn't think's right, he'll immediately point that out and say, "We didn't do it like that." And then we disagree, and I usually write my version anyway. But that's that's what one does. My mum is a very special reader of mine. She's 91 now, and she still lives over here with us. And she loves to read each book when it comes out and gets very excited when she sees my name on the cover of the next book. But yes, all in all, my family have been very, very supportive. And I think they were quite surprised, but I think they've got used to it now.
Well, Lisa, as always, our last interview question is, our writers over 50 are quite unique. Do you have advice for writers 50 and above?
I think my advice would be do it now. You'll always find reasons not to start. It's a bit like us moving to Galicia. There are lots of reasons why we shouldn't do it. And lots of our friends said, "Oh, I wish I could," but in the end, we just did it. And I think it's the same with writing. I think if you think of reasons not to, you'll always put it off. So just go for it. And I think the important thing is, remember, age is just a number. It's nothing else, nothing more than that. You only have to look at my mum to know that.
Well, you have good genes there. So that's wonderful. And I think you're a brave soul, because I have always thought about moving to a foreign country, but I've never done it. And I'm always so intrigued by all of you who do and create another life and community there. So we're so appreciative of you dialing in all the way from Spain today. And we're excited to say that you're now one of our authors over 50.
Thank you so much, Julia. It's been fabulous.
Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday, when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend. And check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's DAILY, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing. And remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.